Hey, Buckaroo.
Hey, Vicky.
Oh dear, are you okay?
Yeah. Tired.
I'm sorry. It is like, what, 8 p.m. there for you?
It's 10 p.m. here.
No, it's 10 p.m., right? Sorry, I was just typing in 8. Yeah, sorry. It's kind of
That's
weird.
okay. I'm happy to be at this meeting. I'm just tired of switching jobs and then new job first day.
Oh, is today your first day?
Last Friday was, but that was really like HR. So the day was actually the actual day.
Yeah. So you're going to tell me where you are now?
Not yet. Soon they want to do a marketing
Okay.
announcement probably. I need to ask for everything permission.
Okay.
You know how it
That's
is.
fine.
Still
Yeah, I
haven't
get it.
landed.
That's okay.
But I'm happy this group is there. And I'm also happy that the tooling group was rebooted. Was OpenSSF.
Yeah, no, it's really pleased with what Josh is doing with the tooling group so far. Trying to set some guidelines and parameters and direction for the group. So that's really great.
Awesome.
It is unfortunate that it overlaps with the Spdx tech call, but you know, what are you going to do? Only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, well, maybe I can skip it sometime and then jump to the other one. But you know, it is, you never know which call is going to be the call that you have to attend.
Well, but they are recorded, so at least there's that.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey everyone.
Hey, Lorenzo.
Hey Vicky. Was there any follow-up on changing the meeting time? I think I received the email from Sirob about the doodle poll, but I didn't see anything after that.
No, I filled out a doodle poll, but I haven't seen anything. There was nothing on the Slack. I checked earlier this morning.
Okay.
And let me check for those of you who haven't seen the notes yet. Let me drop a notes link into the chat. There's a Google Doc for you. And there's something on the agenda for today to talk about it, which means it's not moved yet. It will be starting the 20th of April. There will be a new time at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays, but that won't be until the next call.
Okay. Sorry to ask so many questions, but is there a link to the okay, there is a link to the Google. You just posted it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just now posted it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised Krog isn't here yet. He's usually right on time, so he must have had another call just beforehand. Well, while we're waiting, if you have not done so yet, please have a look at the Google Doc, which I will once again paste in there, since if you're just joining, you won't have seen it. And go ahead and mark your attendance so we can track all that sort of goodness. And let me just check the Slack to see whether we've got anything. No, nothing from Krog there. Oh, there's a Krog.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. Got involved in actual work stuff that I get paid to do, not what I want to do. Here. And my IT department blew away my Chrome configuration, so I no longer have access to LastPass to get in to be the meeting administrator. Grumble, grumble.
That was very helpful of them.
if that's the
It's-
worst that your IT department has done, you're still lucky.
It's a great opportunity to work for a company that has such an active IT department.
Very engaged.
I get to reboot my computer every Wednesday. Every other day, I get some updates. It's great.
Do you get warning before the computer reboots?
It says you can reboot now, or you can delay this 3 hours.
So yes or yes.
Yes or yes.
It's cool. If I could get
Either way.
everyone to sign into the agenda, if you have any open items you would like to get addressed today, that would be super.
Item I added is, as I mentioned on Slack, Thomas is here from Spdx. So he'll be talking to us. I don't know where you wish to put that on the agenda. And I'm liking the braid.
Thank you. I got it was kind of everywhere today. We will listen to Thomas shortly after we clear out a couple business items. First and foremost, as is tradition with the group, do we have any new friends that are here today that want to introduce themselves to the group?
Could I ask for a quick thing? Could
Sure.
could somebody add the working group meeting notes link to the Google Calendar invite?
Well, that will be something interesting that we will get to deal with shortly, Jonathan, because we're going to be changing the meeting invite. We have some exciting news.
Is this where C. Rob would normally go?
Exactly. To meeting invite. So I will, once I contact my dear friend Jory after this call, I will see about getting that added in, Jonathan. Although there's some new exciting nonsense that the TAC is implementing. We could also briefly touch on. But first and foremost, do we have any new friends that wanted to say hello and introduce themselves?
I think I may have not been to this one yet. So I'll say yes. I'm Tom. I'm helping look after Bloomberg's software supply chain efforts, new efforts. And I think post some admin, we finally managed to be back being members with OpenSSF, some drop balls at some point last year. Right now I'm kind of trying to drop into as many of these to see which what they're about and which we can get value from and contribute back to as well. We're really in the very early stages of designing and thinking about this problem. So yeah, excited to learn.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Tom. I think you'll find this will be your favorite working group because it is mine.
They all say that. No, I'm looking forward to
I
it.
do say that a lot. Jennifer, did you want to say hello? Are you a new friend?
Hi, yes, I am similar. Hi, I am joining just to sit in, listen in, see how, if at all, this will apply to my new role. I am starting a new role at Tidelift in security and just going to be joining a bunch of different groups to see what makes the most sense.
Excellent. Well, welcome. This is a lot of fun crowd here. And we're going to have some exciting news in just a few minutes before we get to talk about SPDX. Can I have a volunteer to assist with meeting notes today?
I will assist, but I will need some help. It looks like, Jeffrey, are you my note-taking buddy today? Or is your
I'll be
hand up for
happy
some other reason?
dance on the keyboards for a bit, if that's helpful.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you. Everyone's welcome to type, but it's just nice to have someone that's focused on that because we'll get some interesting conversations. So I saw Thomas's hand first. Do you want to introduce yourself, Thomas?
Yeah, I thought so. Yes, I'm invited, but I also wanted to join. But I've been sniffing in and out of OpenSSF, and then I saw some groups for not developing. So I actually have multiple hats on. So I used to be the head of open source for Computer Technologies. Now I'm a new head of open source for another company, but that's not yet public. So yeah, I am. I have actually multiple hats on. So I am the maintainer, one of the core maintainers of OSSU Toolkit, which is a SDA tool under the Linux Foundation, where basically we're trying to make license and security compliance and software bill of materials easier. Then I'm just like Vicky, I'm on the steering committee of the to-do group. So doing open source offices, helping the whole open source management enterprises. And yeah, then I also do Spdx, where I'm lead for the vulnerabilities profile. And I've been doing that and I've been SPX already for many years since the beginning. And then I also dabble in open chain whenever possible. I'm basically trying to fix the it started out like I'm in my original technologies was in the automotive business. We already back in like God knows 2016 we looked at the supply chain security issues, and yeah, in automotive supply chains are very complex. And yeah, well, our company was my previous employer is owned by BMW, Daimler, and a Volkswagen Group, and also by Continental and Bosch, and all of them basically came together and said like, hey, how can we do this? But as usual, it took a long while, and so the best solution that we came up with is just basically all open source offices working together to build the tooling that we basically need, because we couldn't find anything on the market that actually works. And eventually we moved to the Linux Foundation and under ACT. But yeah, so we're licensed security tool originally. Now we do security, and also we do other things as well for basically what is vital for to-do group members for OSPOs basically.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Hopefully you'll be returning many times in the future. And do we have any
Thomas,
other
is this
new friends?
also where C. Rob might say something like, and soon you will no longer be here?
Well, we won't be right here, but we'll be adjacent to here in the future when we have our silver spacesuits and flying cars. Any other new friends that wanted to say hello?
Hi, I think it's just myself. I came last meeting, but I was having some technical difficulties, so I couldn't say hello. But my name is Abby, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Kansas, and I'm working on some research with Lorenzo regarding aggressive bug reports. So I look forward to attending and learning, helping when I can.
Excellent. Hello again. Good. All right. I am going to defer, if it's okay with the group, our conversation about our charter, since we have a special guest today that wants to come talk about SPDX. So is that okay with the group if we defer talking about the charter till next time? I see some thumbs. That makes me happy. Don't hear any objections. So we will talk about the charter. There is an open issue. Feel free to, if you have strong feelings or have suggestions, please comment there. The one thing I did want to talk about before we get to our special guest is we did a doodle poll trying to find a little bit better time so we could have some more folks from different time zones participate in this call. And the voting is in, and I am pleased to announce with a overwhelming majority of 8 votes, we will be moving this call to 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to noon Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. That way we'll be able to pick up a couple friends from EMEA, most notably Marcus from SUSE. He really was anxious to participate. So I will work with Jory to get the meeting invite changed. And per Jonathan's suggestion, I will get the, see if we can get the meeting notes added to that calendar invite. Any questions about that? And if we need to, we still have the option, if we have folks from APAC that are super interested in participating, we have the option to schedule either alternating calls, but for the time being, the majority of folks that participated stated they wanted to go Wednesdays, 11 Eastern. All right, without further ado, I will yield the floor to Thomas that wants to talk about SPDX defects. Welcome, Thomas, and please take it away, sir. We can see your screen.
We cannot hear you though, Thomas.
New machine. Still fixing things. It should work now.
It's only how Thomas builds suspense before he starts his session.
No, I have some. Yeah.
Yes, he's known for his drama.
All right. So yeah, talk a little bit about SPDX and what we've been working on. So I don't know how much people know originally about the history of SPDX, basically. But originally it came out of the license compliance world, where people wanted to share, exchange information about license obligations, like which licenses are found in particular source code, which license is applicable, what do you need to do to basically comply with your obligations. So it was basically a machine readable format to exchange that, so that if a vendor produces something, they could just produce an SPDX SBOM with it, and then basically the consumer would know exactly like, okay, if I put this piece of software in my software, then this is what I have to put in my my open source notices. Over time, it basically has evolved. So now it is a license, and now we're adding also security references. But in the current version that's out currently, version 2.2, basically you can, technically you can via comments. It's a little bit hacky. But now what we're now doing is we are making a new version 2.3 where we're adding security references, and I'll show the current proposal that's currently being discussed. And in parallel, we're also working on SPDX 3.0, which is a complete overhaul of the spec, where we're really enabling much more scenarios. The biggest change basically in 3.0 is that we're going to go to a setup with profiles, and then we have different working group for different profiles. So in 2.x, basically it's one thing get all. You can you have licenses, and that's all. You cannot make an SBOM without license information. Well, technically you can set all the fields to I have no opinion, which is kind of in SPDX speaks no assertion. But you have like lots of additional data that basically you don't need. If you just want to send these packages are in my software and I'm not telling you anything about the licensing, you basically send an enormous amount of fields. So in 3.0, we're going to introduce profiles. So you have a base profile to basically do base package data, and then on top of it, say you can activate the vulnerabilities profile if you want to communicate vulnerabilities, or you can add the optional the licensing profile, or you can add, say, the provenance profile, which is basically a profile where the idea is that you can track every step how software is being built. All of the information you can record it. So that's similar. I don't know if people are familiar with in Toto. And then there's also a user profile that's developed in Japan that's kind of describing the type of software that you're dealing with. But yeah, so what happened was there's lots of discussion on 3.0. So the idea was actually to switch earlier this year already to 3.0, but there's so many discussions, so many new features that people want to stock in. So 3.0 is kind of delayed. So at some point, I was like, no, I need to ship stuff now. I have lots of my users that want to communicate security information. So I'm just going to patch up the 2.x with a minimum thing that we can use to communicate security info. And so it's still under discussion. You're now literally seeing things discussion. We're going to have a 3-hour workshop actually this week to hopefully finalize the proposal before we're going to officially post it. But you're going to kind of like a sneak peek. This is literally the live document that we're working on. So I said, what are we doing? We're extending. I hope my maybe is a little bit bigger, so it's easier for people to see. So yeah, we're extending basically 2.3 to add sources of security vulnerability information. I said why, that should be pretty much obvious, but they said it's kind of a patch. But it's not going to be the perfect one-fits-all solution. As I said, this is a patch where we just want to convey some information. It's better than nothing. And so what we're going to do with the current proposal in Spdx, there's a concept called external reference. So this is kind of a link to something else. I have included in the proposal two examples. So for instance, here you use an external reference where you can add a link, for instance, to a CPE 2.3 type. And here we have another one, an external reference to a Perl. I don't know if people are familiar with package URL, but you can basically, yeah, this is another way. This is kind of a, Perl is a concept kind of like a universal identifier for packages, which is actually a major problem. So the current proposal, and I'm going to skip some of the other wording, is to add a new external reference, which is based kind of on an OSV with a slight twist on it, but we're taking some of the bits from OSV, but absolute minimum, and that's what basically what we're proposing to add. So I'm assuming if people in this group are familiar with OSV, because I think it's now OpenSSF. We basically took advisory. We're adding a new one called disclosure. There's a lot of discussion on this one. So the actual descriptions are still being hashed out this week. But the advisor should be pretty much clear. Disclosure, the idea is that you can link to a document where you can say like, hey, this is how it applies to our products. So again, you have the vulnerability, and then you have another document that says like, okay, but this is the impact on how my product or not impact all of stuff, and it's just going to be linked. Then we have fix. This is just, hey, here's the fix for the particular vulnerability, and then we have URL. That's basically if it's none of the above. So if you want to put any, I think so in OSV, this is called web, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, there was a lot of discussion about it. Most people wanted just to have a URL, but from the open source community, and also from the tooling, so I'm also a tooling maintainer, we really wanted to have an extra options where you can spread more information. So this is kind of how that would look like with an example in Spdx in the JSON format. Again, you define the category security, then you have the link to the advisory, and then you say type advisory. And here you have the code fix. It's relatively straightforward. The second thing that we had also added to the proposal is to make adding additional packaged identifiers to your Spdx file kind of, well, we can make it mandatory, but add a strong recommendation to do this. Again, the problem is there are various tools. Each tool will make their own format of Spdx identifier, right? Now, what if you basically get security info from your vendor, and yeah, how do you cross-match it with your own systems? And so now normally we have CPEs and we have Perls, but again, these fields are optional in the Spdx spec, and we cannot make them mandatory without breaking backwards compatibility and all stuff. So we're just going to add if you add security information exchange in your Spdx file, we strongly recommend to add these identifiers to them. There is some kind of also, again, I understand why people don't include them, because basically a CPE you can't compute. It's you need to have a database basically to do cross matching, but hopefully, well, we need to put in the proposal. My thinking is that at least for your own packages that you as a vendor create, you should know your own CPE identifier, hopefully. And for the package URLs, again, you can compute, but they are not perfect. Again, the problem of a package identifier is still not 100% solved, but at least we're trying to add them. So if people want to do their own lookups, it makes it works a lot easier. We had many other options that were being discussed, and hang on, there's a whole list in this document. Let me see if I can find one of this here. There's a whole table. So again, we had all other options with even more facts and other stuff. But what we're now trying to do, we are under kind of we want to get this out as soon as possible. So what we said is basically, hey, we're going to go for these 4 as the minimum. Those are going to go in 2.3, and those we're going to work out and push to the community first, as basically, or to the tech group and the whole Spdx stream, to say like, hey, this is the first where we're getting first discussion. Anything else, any other standards or stuff, 2.3.1. So at least we have something now that we can push in the market, and anything additional can be done later. Questions? I see the chat. Let's move it here.
I have a quick one, even though I've been attending the meetings. I haven't been paying a lot of attention in the meetings, so full disclosure on that. So this is not going to be pushed up to ISO as part of the ISO standard yet, correct? Because Spdx is an ISO standard for those who haven't heard that yet.
2.2 is an ISO version. So technically, yes, it can be in the ISO standard.
So 2.2 is, but 2.3, is that going to get pushed up and update the ISO standard?
I was guessing it would, but I know it's a lot of work to push things out to the ISO. So I'm not sure. I can ask, actually. I would have to double check, but my presumption was that we would, because it's such an important thing to add security vulnerability information, even as a temporary fix. And well, I say temporary fix, but we have lots of Spdx users that basically have their own homegrown solutions, or so for them to upgrade and jump to 3.0 will maybe take them 1 or 2 years, and for them making the jump to 2.3, where they add again to an existing field 2 other types, is much more easier for them to implement. So I presume that we do want to push this to ISO just for the huge user base that basically is going to be on 2.x for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Yeah, I think that word assume is pretty dangerous, especially considering the amount of, I mean, in general, but especially considering the amount of work here. So because I just happened to have them open because I needed that link, I will add this to the agenda for the defects call this week. You're welcome.
Well, so we added in the way how we did this the last time. So the going to ISO is a lot of work, but the document generation was kind of set up in an automated way. So we made lots of, I spent too much time doing that work so that we will be set up when we go to ISO again. It would just be a few presses on the buttons and the engine would spit out the document again, basically.
Okay. I will defer to anyone and everyone else who has questions about SPDX and how it might interact with this working group.
I had 2 questions myself, but I would love to hear if anyone else had questions for Thomas. While you're thinking about it, I was curious, how would you foresee this working with an initiative like VEX, Vulnerability Exchange?
Ooh, you're going to dangerous fields. We have lots and lots of discussions about VEX. So it's in this proposal. So the current proposal is that we just link with the disclosure document. You can link to a VEX document. Or actually there's multiple things like there are other formats as well. So we have CSAF and that includes VEX and all that other stuff. So for 3.0, and again, this is where the major work for me is going to start, is how we can, if we're going to harmonize, if yes, how are we going to harmonize? But for 2.x branch, I select, we're just going to make it a link to any type of document. And the spec is not aware what type of document you're sending. So any tool that parses the 2.x document, they would just make it a link and say, here you can get more information. In 3.0, the idea is that we would actually figure out a way how we can actually embed it in the spec so that you can actually use it. But again, the way how it's going to look like. Is it a CSAF document that, for instance, embeds an Spdx document, or is it an Spdx document that links to a CSAF document, or are we going to go like what CycloneDX did, where CycloneDX basically embedded VEX into CycloneDX? Again, there are so many multiple options. And there's lots and lots of discussion. There are people that are of the opinion that, for instance, you should not put vulnerabilities in an SBOM, but it should be a separate document. I could argue the other way around. So, so again, there's so many things and different opinions, and I'm now trying to basically bring some consensus in the group to say like, hey, this direction is what we're sailing. Yeah, but yeah, VEX will definitely go in. At least now we give you an opportunity to link to a VEX document. And there's also, and I haven't shown here, but what you could do is you could do something. Say, imagine that this is a link to a VEX document. Then you would need to make this, of course, you need to make this a URL. And what you can then actually also do, I think you can do directly, oops, I have to remember what the syntax was, but I think you can do something like a comment, and then you can say, this is my VEX doc. So technically speaking, you could, for human readability, you can communicate via a comment in the external ref that to readers that actually read this file that this is a VEX document. But in the last meeting, we explicitly said there was a proposal to add like a kind of particular labeling in the comment to indicate what type of document it was. And I said like, we're not, the group consensus, we should not use free-form comment fields to convey information what type of link it is. If people want to do it, they can add a comment, but don't abuse comment fields to convey basically what should be in an actual dedicated field. Again, it's a patch. It's not a perfect solution. It's a patch that will enable more use cases. The proper solution will come in 3.0, and we invite anybody to basically to join the 3.0 discussion and to convey their viewpoint or their needs that they would like to see in or the use cases in Spdx 3.0.
So you brought up an interesting point, Thomas. In a past life, I worked for a very large commercial open source supplier. And at the time, they were not willing to, the standards weren't baked enough to commit to producing a file format or a different format. So could you maybe talk a little bit about what the adoption of this, of SPDX in general, by both kind of open source projects and then maybe commercial suppliers? What have you seen as adoption?
So the most familiar I am is basically or it's basically the industry for my previous employer, which is automotive. And basically in automotive, there is SPDX is basically the default. It also has to do with I said, because I work on OSS Review Toolkit, so they are all, at least all the Germans are adopting OSS Review Toolkit, because basically it not only allows you to do like SPDX, but it also allows you to do basically a whole validation of the tool chain. So it gives you one tool which you can use to do compliance for your internal development, but you can also do it for your vendors at the same time. And because it's all open source, and because all of the open source offices in this area are basically working together on code development, so it's a user developed tool, they basically, they see it like, oh yeah, we have the feeding. So it's, and again, because I have multiple hat-ons and other users also have multiple hat-on, it's basically we try to work on the standard. So fix the standard, build the tooling, and once we have done, next is basically whatever we can do to help, well, I'm not saying fix the community, but however to make things better in the community. But what we basically recognized already years and years ago was that basically, and that's why I've been impacted, oh, hang on, the standard cannot cover certain use cases. So I cannot do very basic things because it was very much originally a lot of the original people were focused on embedded software. So now I wanted to do package managers. I want to do dependency trees. Oh, that doesn't really fit. So I contributed to Spdx. So now that does this well. Then we figured out like, okay, hang on, there's not the tools that do this. They don't really work for our use cases. Okay, then we started again. First we started building an SDA tool, and then we started working on the standard. But yeah, so and as we go, so that's why I'm in Spdx. I'm in OpenSSF toolkit. I'm in the to-do group for us to basically fix kind of supply chain security, but also mostly do open source a skill in an enterprise. I need basically highly customizable tools that I can really work in the workflow. And what we discovered, like we can as enterprise spend all the money on tools, whatever we want, and we try to fix all the things up. If we don't upstream this and make it easier for the open source world to basically to do the same, to replicate our use case, and whenever we have fixes to upstream these to the open source projects. For me, as working in an open source office, this is like a hamster wheel. I keep on importing broken open source software, and then I need to fix it. I need to clean up, and that's where I said like, no, I don't want to be in the hamster wheel. What can we do to basically make things better in the community? And eventually that will also make things better for everybody. But it's a long battle. I said I'm now on this supply chain security since 2016, and again, we're building the tooling, doing the standards, everything in parallel with like a very small group of people. But yeah, if you see what we have accomplished so far, it's actually quite amazing.
All right. I saw Vicky's hand first, and then Jeffrey, please.
So as far as adoption, both from the open source side and from the enterprise side, especially since the announcement of Spdx as a standard, I've personally seen it grown considerably, which is part of the reason why Wipro has joined Spdx and why I spend a lot of time over there. So, you know, I definitely have some skin in this game, but have seen a lot of growth. For instance, former large employers of leaders of this group are working to get Spdx identifiers into some of their Linux distributions and to standardize that as they release things. And that's on the open source side. There's also a number of other open source projects that are working on it. The Spdx group is working with some the Spdx legal group as they get the cycles, because, you know, volunteers and crap like that. They are working with various package managers and communities like that to try to get this be more standardized. And so that is moving as slowly as you would expect for volunteers, but it is definitely moving. As far as the enterprise side of things, it's Spdx is being picked up by a number of vendors. And so a number of the supply chain analysis SCA tools out there do support Spdx as an output format. It's starting to be seen as something that's required for, you know, EEO 14028 or whatever the heck that number is, because it is mentioned specifically in it, and that's gotten it a whole lot of attention, which is great. Yay, go Spdx. But you know, again, volunteers, attention, you have to be able to scale, and that only goes so far. But it is actually getting picked up quite a lot, which is nice to have an interchange format that people can work with. There are obviously others, so you're going to have the Cyclone DXs and your things like that. So it's not a competition so much as just different standards, right? And that means that people get to pick whichever flavor they want, and all the vendors have to support them. As we all know, that's how that works. So Jeff, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Vicky and Thomas. Good to hear your voice again. It's been a while. I just was curious if you had additional observations. You shared a little bit of a point of view on Cyclone DX. I was just curious if you'd had any additional workings with them or collaborations. As Vicky just noted, I think we're going to be in a position where, you know, we're going to have clients asking for SBOMs and other files in, you know, their format du jour, if you will. So we're going to have to try and be pretty flexible.
Yeah, so this is the funny thing for us. Like, so yes, I work on the Spdx standard, but I'm also a maintainer of OSSF Toolkit. And now OSSF Toolkit, we support both. So I'm my co-core maintainers, Sebastian Schubert, he has lots of interaction with Steve Springer. So I was just like, I'm overloaded already with all the other stuff. Sebastian, you communicate to the cycle expert. Yeah, so basically from a tooling perspective, we basically support both. And so yeah, we have a very good relationship with Steve, as I would say. So yeah, for me, yeah, these are two standards. I actually think that both serve their own particular groups, and yeah, in some of the cases, CycleDX is better. In other Spdx cases, it really depends what kind of use case. There is not really one standard that basically solves everything, no matter what either one will claim. And then we also have something. What is the other one? Swift from the NVD, but yeah, I hardly see that one. That's the Swift.
Yeah, that
Swift,
one seems to be aging out. And of course, if someone decided that they were going to fix this, they would come up with a Hurricane DX, and then we'd have 3 that we'd have to support.
Yeah. So that, yeah, it is what it is basically. So like the funny, well, again, one of the other observations. So I do a lot of talking in the community because of my roles, and also a lot of big companies, and they're like, oh, we just want the SBOM just there. So the whole SBOM discussion, yeah, there is the executive order, but in reality, this whole thing is, even though we're now doing, I'm doing this for a couple of years, the whole discussion is really in its infancy state. Neither of these standards has really won. And I get companies that I talk to because I do some consultancy on pro bono consultancy on other stuff, and people ask me a lot of things, and like, oh, we want to do this, and think of it that now we're at the stage that, yeah, tools can produce an SBOM. The biggest problem, and this is why we also develop our things, which over here, is the quality of this SBOM. What can it actually detect, and how is it formatted? So we started basically developing our own open source SCA tooling, because basically we figured out that a lot of things were missed. And if you want to create a high quality SBOM, you need something that you can highly customize. I mean, tools do not 100% properly detect source code, because guess what? Humans are very creative, and they write source code and inclusive in how they build the code in hundreds of different ways. You cannot just get over. It works. Most tools, for me, this is maybe too short for what the vendors do, but are basically built for the banking industry, where they have very strict lines on how they build software, and software is built in a particular way. Now, if you want to build a tool that like what we're trying to do, I don't know if people familiar are with a tool called Videolan or VLC. This is like an open source media player. You can dump any file in it and it will display it. Our idea with OSSF Toolkit was kind of that we built something like that. You basically get a tool, you chuck it at it, and it will just produce an SBOM. It will allow you to do security and licensing check, and it will do work properly. Even now, after all these years, yeah, we know we cannot recognize anything. So what we built in OSSF Toolkit is we have an option that you can specify an additional Spdx file for things that are not automatically detected. Because you don't want to know how many times I figured out, like, oh, hang on, yeah, this is technically a Java project, but hey, they are compiling here OpenSSL, and then they're making Java live embedding. But of course, OpenSSL is C code. C code does not have a package manager, so you cannot automatically detect it. Then people are like, oh yeah, then I built this large database with fingerprints of source code, and then I can recognize the version. No, you can't, because guess what? It's open source code. It gets forked a lot and altered. So, but the funny thing is, and this is for me the simple thing, have you talked to the actual developer? Because he probably knows exactly which version or variant or fork of OpenSSL they stuck in the code. And yeah, they probably have it recorded on some wiki page or issue somewhere else. What if we just give them a way to just record this in the code base? So then when we scan their code, it picks up the Spdx file and it knows exactly, oh, they got this C++ code from this website, and this is the exact version. So we don't need to do all of this massive database. And so for us, it was like, yes, we built a tool that solves our problem that we had in our enterprise, but we want to give this to the open source community. The open source community does not have the compute to scan hundreds and thousands of open source projects. It does not have the massive databases with fingerprint matches. Yes, you can get this free from vendors, but I know tons of open source projects. And I talked to the Apache Foundation, the Eclipse Foundation. They're just categorically, they do not want to use in some, again, I'm all in it, but they categorically do not want to use proprietary software. So like, no, we should have an open source solution. So we wanted to give something that is fully open source, and so the core is fully open source, but as an enterprise, or if you want to, you can have commercial extensions on top and to fill in particular gaps where there is no open source solution. But yeah, in the end, we want to offer something that solves the problem. And for us, the solution is big an open source tool. And we also quickly realized, we thought initially it is like 2 years, and we see often new tools popping up that do software component analysis and all of the stuff, and we see them pop up and half a year they're dead, because this field is way more complexer than people think. It really is a long breath marathon battle to get this done. And that's also the other thing that we're looking at in Spdx, so we're now for 3.0, is we need to we have the standards, but how do we get in a way that if we see stuff in code, particular dependency tree, how can we align that how you should use the standard? So that no matter what tool you use, if you're scanning a node package, you will always get pretty much the same SPDX. There might be difference in licenses, there might be different security vulnerabilities that are detected, but at least we know that the dependency tree is the same, and hopefully the package naming and all the other stuff is the same. Because now one of the things that we wanted to do originally, we were kind of naive. We're like, oh, we take all of this open source tooling, we were doing licensing, we add a security tool, and we use SPDX maybe as the communication between these two. That doesn't work. Because yes, although they both produce SPDX or CycloneDX, it really doesn't matter which standard you want to do, which one you want to name, and it's both standards. Or each tools produce their own flavor and variant. And that's why consuming SPDX, where you actually consume the dependency tree or even the security information from another tool, is really difficult, because each tool basically does it in their own way. And that's why for 3.0, we are now like, okay, well, we kind of need to go there where we need to give guidance on how this should look. Again, we can't fix this for 2.x. This is where, at least on the open source side, where we have under LF, we have something called ACT. So we basically work together with our, sister open source team. It's called, there's a called Turn. So SPDX, OSS Toolkit, Turn, Fossology, all of the open source projects basically in this space, and ScanCode, we all meet and talk to each other, how we can basically collectively work together. And that's how we basically also help SPDX to become better, because it's tooling and standard, basically people all talking together to see, hey, we have a problem to solve. How we're going to do this?
I had the great pleasure to meet Alan Friedman way back the beginning of 2016. So I was been aware of the SBOM challenges for a very long time. It's very complex, Thomas. So as you've expressed, so what can this working group do to help further your message to get more maintainer adoption or get more awareness within the industry? How can we partner with you on this?
Well, yeah, awareness is good. I think the biggest challenge, and that's gonna add, is help with the 3.0. And especially I'm looking for input from the open source community. I have enough vendors on the table, like the security vendors on the table. I have all of them on the pretty much. I literally, I'm looking for more input from the open source community. So again, we have very interesting discussions, like how do you do security vulnerabilities for instance, say Docker. So the problem, again, this is why we built it. What problem that we commonly see is, and that I see a lot of vendor tools do, it's kind of a best effort approach, where, oh, we match it against the database, whatever we find, that's what we report to you. And again, I am in automotive, but I also have good relationship with the medical world. Doing like a best enough effort for creating an SBOM for a medical device is simply no. It may be a pacemaker. We need to know what actually is all the software that's in there. There can be still some unknowns, but we cannot have like, oh yeah, we did a kind of a best effort. We had 5 minutes to do it, and that's so the level of compliance is much higher. And but software is really complex. So how do you do that translation? So this is where we're looking at the community, like how do we do it? How does the standard look like? Most security standards are also devised for the enterprise use case. So they have really big, if you, well, people are familiar with the CSAF standard, it's a really big document. This is why when, what is it, Russ Cox from Google, he pinged me. I think he's also normally in this group. When he was working on OSV, and I read that, I was like, yeah, this is something I can work with. This is like a simple document. So we need kind of more verses from the open source community to basically get to balance out what are the use cases that are really in the community, what is really the minimum information, so that the standard becomes easy to read and simple to adopt for the open source community. Instead of that, that it becomes a standard that's basically only an enterprise standard. Because for me, I like the real solution is building things for the open source community, because they're really the source where things are being created. It's not done in the end. Well, again, it's done in the enterprise, but the real source is the open source community. We need to make a standard that is easy for them to adopt, where they can easily, if needed, can write a library in a couple of weeks in their favorite language. And yeah, so I'm looking for more of it. And then, yeah, when the big battle is going to happen with CSAF and all that other stuff, I probably would love to have some people that I can just ping and reference and get input. So yeah, I was actually thinking maybe to join this group. I need to see how my schedule. This call is currently at 10 p.m. in the night for me.
Oh, but as you might have heard in the beginning of the call, we'll be moving it a little bit earlier. It'll still be afternoon if you're in Germany, I assume.
Yeah, I'm in Germany.
It'll be in the afternoon, but it'll be hopefully be a little more palatable.
I'm used to it. As Vicky asked me, but like, yeah, I'm used to it doing late calls. It comes with the territory. As long because I also have sometimes calls with Japan. As long as it's not Japan call in the morning and this call in the evening, I'm fine with it.
I was mistaken. I thought we had an amazing opportunity for you, but checking my email, I was wrong about the date. The Linux Foundation is putting on a summer security conference in Austin, Texas, in the States, and they created a whole sub conference called the Global Security Vulnerability Summit. And unfortunately, the call for papers just closed, but that might have been a good opportunity to do a birds of a feather to say, hey, I would like to talk about how we can get better collaboration or better engagement with Spdx and work on the next version. That would have been potentially a great opportunity to get developers and actual non-vendory folks helping out. I put a link to the conference if anyone's interested in going in the meeting notes, but unfortunately the CFP just closed.
Yeah, unfortunately it's also COVID, and I cannot fly into the US. Well, that's correct. I can fly in the US, but if I come back into Europe, I'm in trouble.
Get out.
That's the problem.
What other questions does the group have or comments for Thomas?
Just give me a second. I need to open the door.
All right.
All right,
Thomas. Oh, good. You're back. There were no additional comments or questions, so I want to thank you for coming. Hopefully, this will be a habit. You'll be able to join us more frequently. I think this is something very definitely of interest to the community and something that we can help talk about and help raise awareness on and hopefully contribute to. We will next time talk about the charter. So please take a moment to look at that issue in Git, if you have any comments on it. And I wanted to thank Jory. She got our repository set up for our next project, which is the security researchers working with open source maintainers, a coordinated vulnerability disclosure guide. So that stub is out in Git, and I will populate the straw man for the document. And that way people can start submitting pull requests and whatnot and comments on what's there. So ideally next time we'll talk about the charter and talk about the security researcher guide. Any last questions or comments before we conclude for the day?
Just thanks, Vicky, for all the speedy typing, and C-Rob, thanks for leading the parade.
Oh, glad to do it. We will talk to everybody in 2 weeks, but we'll be moving the meeting time to US Eastern morning. So 11 a.m. Eastern will be the new meeting time. I'll get Jory to adjust the meeting invite and get that sent out to everybody. So thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.